Well, it's a pleasure to have Dan Crenshaw on with us, a Republican congressman from Texas. I've never had it. Have I had you on this show, Congressman? I know you've been on TV.
Hey, it's great to be with you too, Mark. I don't think I've been on your radio show. We've definitely been on TV.
Well, it's good to have you. First of all, you know, you wear an eye patch. I want the nation knows you're the gentleman who wears the eye patch. Can you briefly tell everybody what happened to cause you to have to wear that eye patch?
I was hit by an IED. Yeah, it's been 2012 in Afghanistan. Mission out there was with SEAL Team 3 at the time.
Mm-hmm. So you're a combat veteran, obviously, and you're not a chicken hawk like me, I guess. But that said, you and I agree a lot when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to Russia, when it comes to China and North Korea and Iran. In other words, we believe in a very strong military, very strong defense, and that the way you provoke your enemy is by showing weakness. So real peace through strength. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say that's correct. That's absolutely correct. And I appreciate how strong you've stood on this issue. It should seem obvious, but I think too many in our party are driven more by contrarianism than they are by principle. You know, there's not exactly a principle that I can point to that says it's America first to let Russia and China just take over the world. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how that's America first. That's America last.
Why is it that people don't see this axis that has developed now with China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea? I mean, isn't it obvious? Don't they tell us about it? Aren't they acting on it? I mean, you sort of have to be Helen Keller not to see it, don't you?
Yeah, it's painfully obvious. Like you said, they're taking meetings with one another. Their interests align. You know, if you think China is your greatest adversary strategically, and it is, then you should want things that they don't want, right? And they want Russia to win in Ukraine. Now, it'd be a different story if we were talking about losing American troops there. I think the
right.
Criticisms would be much more better understood. But we're writing a check for less than 10% of our defense budget, annual defense budget, to completely decimate one of our strategic adversaries that's worked against us for decades and decades and decades. Mm-hmm. And you know, what I tell people too is like, look, maybe to help you understand. If you're against helping Ukraine, then you have to be for Russia winning. And people are like, no, we're not for that. Well, yeah, by definition, you are. Because the Ukrainians can't fend them off without our help. So by definition, you are for Russia winning. And then that means you're for a Russian military that could have blown through Ukraine without a problem because they wouldn't have had our help and our weapons and our Stingers and our Javelins. And so you'd be for an totally intact Russian military on the borders of Poland and Hungary and Slovakia and Romania, all of which are NATO countries. And you're going to tell me that's a safer situation? That's a more stable situation? And I think what people don't quite understand is that America has a critical interest in just general global stability and preventing chaos, because chaos always spreads. And there's this deeply naive, foolish, and quite dangerous belief amongst many of our compatriots, who we agree on everything else with, but apparently not this, that the world is so large and disconnected that you can just live with chaos all around you and it's going to be fine and nothing's ever going to come home to roost. But that's a deeply naive sentiment, and it's hard to rip people from that belief. Now, I do think people understood that when Trump was president. I think Trump had the right instincts when he talked about Ukraine and Russia. You know, he spoke about this issue quite a bit. That's why I think, and people cheered him for it, and now those same people don't. That's why I label, I think a lot of the criticism here is contrarianism, you know, just partisan contrarianism as opposed to deeply rooted principles.
Talking to Dan Crenshaw, Republican of Texas, and actually if you go back and you check on the internet and so forth, a lot of these people do support Putin in Russia and did root for Putin in Russia beforehand. Let me ask you this, Congressman. I'm concerned that the Biden administration is treating now the Israeli government and Netanyahu the way Obama did. They're actually encouraging this this uprising that's taking place in the state of Israel when Iran is as close as can be to having nukes and is now built an alliance with Saudi Arabia and Russia and China. This is a very concerning situation, is it not?
Yeah, it is. The Democrats have this weird way of with their own naivete and their own obsession with, I think, supposed victims. Like in this case, they uplift the Palestinians as the victims in this situation, and so they always kind of try to take that side, the detriment of a strong, stable, and democratic nation like Israel. And all that does is create chaos. It doesn't help anyone or anything. And I guess I can only explain the Biden administration's reluctance to just strongly support Israel on this as giving into their far left base. That is victimhood oriented, right? They always want to support sort of the opposite of what the like Western civilized approach would be. But it's nonsensical, and it creates an instability that we just don't need right now. And Biden is deeply foolish not to simply carry on with the Trump administration policy of which was actually kind of unique in recent American history of saying, like, we're strong supporters of Israel and that's it. And that led to a cascade effect in the Middle East of the Abraham Accords and Sunni Muslim nations siding with Israel in a very profound way, in a stabilizing way. You don't want to let go of that.
You know, it's interesting. Trump never surrendered. Trump never was an isolationist or a pacifist. I agree with you. And yet some of the people who claim to speak for him or think they're like him are not like him in any way. He doesn't want to just walk away from Ukraine. He wants to negotiate something.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell what his position is at the moment. I do think he's kind of following the sentiments of Twitter at the moment, but so I don't know, and I don't want to speak for him, but I do know what he said very clearly while he was president and also immediately following the invasion. I remember posting on social media exactly what he said. He said he would be stronger than Biden. He said he would give Ukraine weapons and better weapons, faster and more intensely. And that's probably the right approach because, in this, again, Putin only respects strength. And so the right approach here was what Trump did initially, which was just threaten Putin. Say, look, if you bomb Ukraine, we're going to bomb the hell out of you. And that's just verbal deterrence. It really, sometimes international politics really is that simple. Just make the other guy believe that you beat him on the escalation ladder. And that creates deterrence, and it creates stability, which is in America's interest. So I totally agree with you, which is why I bring up what has become just a reformation, if you will, of America first. America first means actual America first. It doesn't mean let your enemies walk all over you. Mm-hmm. But it seems to mean that for too many people who claim the America first badge, who would have peace at any cost and just let our adversaries do whatever the heck they want. That's not America first.
No, America first can't be Putin first. We're here with Representative Dan Crenshaw. Representative Crenshaw, what's interesting is the position you espouse, or I espouse for that matter, is the traditional conservative Reaganite position that defeated the Soviet Union and empowered our military and resulted in increased military spending. We had a 600-ship Navy. Nobody would mess with us, and we were able to keep peace that way and make peace that way. And I think some people are confused that the warmongers are in Beijing and Moscow and Tehran, that we're not the warmongers. But this isn't really new, isn't it? This is the kind of thing that was taking place in the late 30s and early 40s in terms of the mentality of both political parties, when Britain was under attack and Churchill was begging for help and Lend-Lease. And I mean, there it is right in front of our eyes, and yet still our eyes are closed, no?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. That kind of isolationism does have a long history. It probably always will. What causes it, I don't quite understand. I think it's just deeply naive. I don't know how else to explain it. What I tell people is, like, it might have made sense in the 1700s. And that's even a maybe, because I'll tell you what, America wouldn't have won our revolution without the French coming out to help. So the French seem to think that them interfering in a war across the ocean made sense for them. to defeat their own strategic adversary. So it even made sense back then. Maybe you have to go even further back. But it certainly doesn't make sense now when the war is a 9-hour flight away. That's why I tell people, it used to take 6 months to get to Europe. It takes 9 hours, less depending on where you're going. So the world is a small place, whether you like it or not. You can wish to live in a different world if you want, and you can write a fiction novel about it, about how you can just close off your borders and everything will just work out. You'll have the exact same lifestyle that you have now. But it's not true. It's just not true. It's a false sense of being. And, there are people out there that think very differently than us and want a very different world order. And they are the Chinese. They're Xi Jinping and Putin and North Korea and Iran. And they'll do whatever it takes to thwart our interests. The Chinese are doing it quite well at the moment. So we need to wake up to it and understand that peace through strength, actually, you can't forget the strength part. A lot of people like to say that as a slogan, but they totally forget about the strength part, because the strength part actually takes some guts and it takes a few tough decisions. And I don't know when our far populist right became 1960s anti-war activists, hippies, because that's what they sound like to me. I don't know how to explain it, Mark. It's strange.
Let me ask you about the southern border, because I don't know how to explain this either. You're the President of the United States. This is your obligation to uphold the laws that have been passed, and he's undermining every one of them. We have people pouring into this country. We don't even know who they are by the millions. We've got fentanyl drugs coming in. We've got slavery going on there. The drug cartels now have positions in every single state. And this guy Mayorkas testifies, and he says, it's a challenge. We're doing everything we can. Blatant lies. Now, there's some Democrats, mostly in your state and some of these other southeast, southwest, southern states, but for the most part, they get away with this. This is perfectly fine. This is another disaster. And by the way, it's hard to unwind this, That's
a disaster of epic proportions. So my goal in the recent months, weeks, has been to target the cartels, because I have to believe that at least that's something we can get the Democrats to agree with. They're not going to agree on any of our border policies or our immigration ideas. They're so far to the left on this stuff. I think they're truly for open borders. But in my mind, I'm like, look, what they can't possibly be for is almost 80,000 Americans dying from fentanyl, which do come from two specific cartels, the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco cartel. And this is a clear and present danger. Over the last few minutes, I have talked about our strategic adversaries and our need to stand up to them. Those are strategic dangers. This is a tactical danger. This is right in front of our face. It is clear and present. I'll tell you what, even the isolationists have to agree on this one. And most of them actually do. So, I've introduced an authorized use of military force against the cartels. It's gotten the attention of the Mexican president, who has proven himself to be quite pro-cartel, as it turns out. I was even surprised by that. He's threatened to come after me in my campaign and in my election season. Oh yeah. I mean, we've got a resolution I hope McCarthy will bring to the floor that against the Mexican president, calling him out for threatening to meddle in American elections. He's starting to come after every Republican who wants to target the cartel, if you can believe that. So, this is a serious danger. It's again, almost 80,000 Americans a year dead from fentanyl poisoning, and you can trace it back to these two specific cartels. They're some of the most powerful organizations in the world, well-armed, well-funded. They have immense power over the Mexican government, over the Mexican people. If we could choose one country, I kind of tell this to people as a thought experiment, if you could choose one country in the world besides your own and make it 10 times better in every single way, which country would you choose? You should choose Mexico. It's our most important trading partner. The stability of Mexico, the prosperity of Mexico matters to Americans a great deal. We should all work together to target the cartels. And the American military could deal with this very, very effectively. We need to do it alongside the Mexican military, but the AUMF is the first legal step to allow that to happen.
And, of course, that's not going to happen anytime soon under this administration, although Trump has threatened it, hasn't he? Trump did.
And I'm aware of, they had plans in their second term to really take this on in a very serious way. That wasn't just kind of your typical rhetoric. I think they were deadly serious about it. And look, there's people who criticize my talk on this, and you're going to talk about invading Mexico. To what end? We're not talking about invading Mexico. Everyone just stop. What we're talking about is, one, diplomatic leverage. You put an AUMF out there, and it authorizes the military to not just immediately go bomb Mexico. You're talking about intelligence collection. You're talking about non-kinetic things that you can't do right now. And just as we do with all other allies around the world, we're talking about operating by, with, and through the Mexican government. But it's a message, too. I mean, imagine if I can get some Democrats to actually agree to this and pass it out of Congress, what kind of message that sends to the Mexican president, and then what kind of actions they might take just to avoid having the American military operate in their country. And maybe they'll actually start taking the cartels more seriously. Maybe the cartels will take us more seriously and stop producing fentanyl. That's not out of the question. So there's more thought put into this. It doesn't necessarily require the apocalyptic conclusions that many draw, and I think purposefully create straw man arguments against this idea.
Now, what is your district? Your district includes what towns and cities?
Well, I'm in the Houston area, so Houston, Woodlands, Pascasita, Kingwood, Montgomery County, Harris County.
Okay, very good. Is it mostly Republican? Is it marginal? What is that district? Sorry, I just don't know.
Well, after redistricting, we're pretty red. We're pretty red. I'd say we're mostly Republican, yeah. All
right.
Originally, it was in a more purple district, but.
Very good, Dan Crenshaw. A pleasure to talk to you, my friend. Appreciate it.
It was a pleasure, Mark. Thanks for having me.
All right, you be well.